Hey everyone, in this game I'm going to be doing another playthrough of a full digital root game, and in this game I decided to choose the Lizard Cult. I wanted to be the Lizard Cult because I feel like it's one of the less intuitive, less easy to understand factions, and so to hear somebody's thoughts while they're piloting the faction might be very helpful for a lot of people. I decided to organize this game with two very experienced players from Discord that I'm friends with, Timothy and Qeyrie, and a stranger from the global chat named Esen. So these are three wonderful players. They all gave me the okay to play this game and record it for YouTube to show you guys, and let's get right started. So as we can see, a couple of little annoying things as there's no Qeyrie in this matchup, which is going to be a bit strange. This tends to favor the cats because there isn't a sort of natural foil to their rapid expansion. And typically if the cats player is really strong, we want to counter that a little bit as a table to push them back. But you don't want to do that too much if the cats player starts struggling because it can be easy to overwhelm them. The other irritating thing is that they chose the bottom left corner, which without the birds means that in standard setup I am forced into the top right clearing, which is not ideal because it has only one building slot. So if I want to get two mouse gardens, I'm gonna have to seek out and develop myself into an additional mouse clearing, which is not something we really love doing. It's gonna slow us down significantly at the start of the game, but hey, lizards have to get used to scoring rather slowly in the early game and then ramp up as the game goes on. The Vagabond player decides to choose the Scoundrel, which is such a Chad pick. Love it. It's one of the weaker Vagabonds, but it requires probably some of the highest skill level among all the other Vagabonds. So if you can win with the Scoundrel, props, because it's an uphill battle. We're gonna set our starting outcast to Fox, not for any real particular reason, just because, as you can see, I have a Fox card in my hand. I'd like to maybe start aiming for getting a Fox clearing underway and maybe craft that crossbow. But when we're fourth in turn order, as we are right now, typically you don't really get the outcast you want unless you're really lucky, because everyone else has a chance to discard cards before you even take your first turn, so it's a little bit irrelevant. The river folk is going to set up in the central rabbit clearing, which is definitely where they want to be, because they have two cards in hand that they can craft right out the gate if they get set up in rabbits, which is a boot card and a rabbit partisans, which we're going to see in a second. Here we are. There you go. So rabbit definitely where they want to be setting up. The Vagabond player slips into this clearing with the other two players, and they're going to do the standard explore the ruin, which makes a lot of sense. And then right now you'll see the reason that they chose the clearing that they did. The Scoundrel is known for having pretty good mobility. Starting with two boots means that they can go somewhere through slip and then move twice to get somewhere else if they need to. But the Vagabond player knows what he's doing, and he's going to be very efficient with his opening turn of explore and then aid each of the two factions in order to start generating points from improving the relationship. A lot of people think that you have to try and optimize as much as possible and get an item right away, but really in advanced sort of game states where the players are all really skilled and aggressive, they're going to start attacking you sooner rather than later, so it's better to get those relationship points early before they force you to become hostile with them by battling you. The Cats player is going to do something I don't really recommend, which is buying a card before the Riverfolk takes their first turn. The reason is that the Riverfolk typically just starts with those three starting funds in their funds box that they get at setup, and that's it for their first turn. But when you make a purchase before the river folk takes their first turn, that means that now they get even more funds on their first turn and they can really start developing. So this is a big gift to the river folk that the Cats player has given. Although I do understand wanting to buy a bird card. The Cats player is going to build a second Fox Workshop, which is a bit curious. I don't hate it. In the Exiles and Partisans deck, there's some interesting stuff you can get with 2 foxes. But then they're going to march twice, and they're going to completely vacate 2 of these clearings. And I understand vacating that one in the north where there's already a lizard. You're probably not going to be able to hold territory that far away from you. But I think that they could have possibly staked a claim in the southeast mouse clearing. I don't really like seeing the first turn have march actions because your early development as cats is extremely important and you want to typically build, overwork, build. Now we're going to see a bird card get used, but notably, it wasn't the bird card that they purchased. They purchased Soup Kitchens, but then they spent a Saboteur's card in order to take an extra action, which is super curious because, one, they could have actually crafted Saboteurs on turn 1, but instead they decided to save it for an extra action, which I don't hate. Crafting Saboteurs is great, but for cats you need every action you can. But why not spend the Soup Kitchens card? Saboteurs you could have actually crafted, but Soup Kitchens, cats almost never get to craft that, so... And even if they could, it's not tremendously valuable for them, so that's a bit of a mystery. Also, now everyone knows that you bought the Soup Kitchens card, so we're all expecting an extra bird card in your hand as well, so it's a lot of telegraphing. This is very risky. They've decided to build 2 buildings in their keep clearing, and if the Riverfolk player were feeling really mean, they could have gone in and just swept that keep right on the first turn, which is very, very rude, but possible, given that there's only 1 warrior defending 3 pieces of cardboard. But instead, the Riverfolk player is going to start drawing some cards. They've drawn a coins card, which is rough. Very, very good draw for the Riverfolk, and of course they're going to start getting their crafting underway by planting a rabbit trade post and then just crafting a boot. Now we have our first turn. Are we going to make a purchase? No, because the Riverfolk already got a huge boon. We don't want to help them too much more, especially at a cost of 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by planting a garden in this fox clearing. It's really risky because I won't be able to protect it with more warriors on this turn, but I have a feeling the Cats player is a little bit too focused on other things, and right now they're kind of the only one who can reach me, aside from the Vagabond. But I think I'm in a weak enough position that no one's really gonna come after me this early, so I can afford to stake a claim, make sure that I maintain rule of that clearing so no one can come in and take it from me. I also put 2 lizard warriors in that southern mouse clearing as a way of sort of blocking the expansion of the cats, because now we're tied for rule, so they can't build something in that mouse clearing and take it from me. I could have gone for bottom right, but that's kind of giving the cats player a little bit too much space, and I want to pressure them a little bit by grabbing a more choke point clearing in the south central mouse. Vagabond takes their turn, they explore in another clearing, and as you can see, I didn't check this on the first turn, but they got a boot and a bag already, which is nice because that allows them to accomplish a quest right away, and they're going to choose to draw some cards, which I usually like. I really like getting some extra cards on the first quest where you would only get 1 victory point. But it definitely feels like the Vagabond is going for a more aid-centered strategy, so getting cards might actually be even more valuable in the long run than a single victory point. So as you can see, they've decided to aid me, improving our relationship, and they've given the Bird Dominance card, which might actually be one of the worst cards for the Lizards. A lot of people seem to over-prioritize bird cards for the Lizard cult, and I think I understand why, because Acolytes feel very important. They feel like a very central part of the Lizard strategy, but really you want to look more at suited cards because they allow you to recruit and build immediately, and more importantly, start scoring. versus bird cards just allowed you to have more acolytes, which is sort of like on a turn delay to when you can start doing your conspiracies. As we can see, now we know what the cats were setting up that second box workshop for. It was to craft a sword, which, that is, I get trying to score 2 points, but that's just a gift to the Vagabond right now by giving them a sword this early in the game. If you want to craft a sword in a Vagabond game, that's fine, but I would highly advise waiting a little bit until they've had a few extra turns, because if you craft it this early, they can get tremendous return on investments just by getting that sword, versus those 2 victory points were probably going to be available to you throughout the game, provided you don't lose the sword card and someone else doesn't craft all the swords from under you, which doesn't typically happen. Swords are typically crafted a little bit later in the game anyway. They're gonna build again and then do a recruit action, which I like. And they've definitely walled off the clearing up in the north box for themselves. Normally, I love what they've done, which is get a recruiter up far away from your keep and block off the clearing, because that is gonna stop an advancing army like the Qeyrie from coming in and sweeping down south. However, in a game without the Qeyrie, really it's just the lizards that could potentially invade, and there's no way they'd be able to really move as an army. The lizards aren't known for just sweeping through clearings, so that recruiter feels a little bit superfluous, but I hate it overall. It's gonna maybe help protect that workshop, but I do like pairing recruiters with sawmills. That way, every time you take a recruit action, you're improving the defenses of your sawmills, in addition to making it harder for someone to overrule you. But they are a bit in a pinch because the otters are just sitting on top of that clearing with 3 building slots. Let's see what the cats do next. So they're going to take a march action, and as predicted, because I tied them for rule in that southern mouse clearing, they had no real choice but to give up control of it, because there's no way for them to have marched in and built very easily. So that pretty much means that I'm going to have exclusive access to that southern mouse, which is fantastic for us. So the Riverfolk Company pretty obviously wants to get that coins card crafted. They have 2 choices here. That keep clearing is now looking extremely juicy with 4 pieces of cardboard defending just by 1 cat warrior. So the cat's player is being very risky right now, but it's actually in the Riverfolk player's best interest to get that coins crafted for 2 reasons. 1, to ensure that you're the one who crafts it before someone else, but 2, because you kind of want to get the cards that you want crafted yourself out of the way, out of the market. That way you can drop the prices back down and start encouraging sales again. Because as long as that coins is in your hand, see, look, they dropped the price down to 2, which is more reasonable. So I'm actually going to go and buy something. I wouldn't have bought if it were priced at 3. That's just too expensive. So now I have an extra mouse card. What we're going to do is with these 2 fox cards, we're going to recruit in order to better protect the gardens. I feel fairly confident that no one's going to come up and get them, and plant an extra garden. We can't score with it yet this turn, but at least with 2 gardens we can improve our drawing. So now I'm drawing 2 cards per turn, and of course we can build a garden, which means now we have 2 suits with 2 gardens. So we're drawing 3 cards, and I can now score with this mouse card that I have. The reason that I wanted to buy that card, it wasn't just so that I could get 2 victory points on my turn, but also I had something that I could discard to have influence over the outcast. Because I don't really want it stuck on rabbit. I have no real ability of seizing another rabbit clearing, and I'm kind of satisfied with my 2 foxes and 2 mice for the moment, so I really want to shift the outcast to either fox or mouse as soon as possible. Also because I've got some cards in hand that I could try to craft. So this step right here, this is critical. A lot of people underrate just how important this phase is for the lizard gameplay. The lizards are discarding cards more than pretty much any other faction, and you have to discard very intentionally. It's not just a question of what you want to keep, but also what cards you're discarding in order to have influence over the outcast. So take this step really carefully. Notice what I've kept. I was checking the Lost Souls to see what the resulting discard situation was going to be, and I've now aimed the Lost Souls towards Fox. This way I could potentially craft either that crossbow or the Qeyrie Emigre card, which I just got, and I could maybe do some converting or battling. Ooh, the Vagabond player just crafted Root Tea, which is very good for them, but what's really bad is that now they've tied the outcast. Even though there's not a single rabbit card in that discard, in the Lost Souls, it's currently tied, which shifts it back to rabbit, which is where we don't want it. So yes, I have a boot card that I could potentially craft, but I don't have any rabbit cards in hand. Now I have another boot card, but I can't really craft them because I have no rabbit cards with which to plant a garden down. So those are, this rabbit outcast is giving us a little bit of problems. This might look really good at the moment because the Vagabond player is just aiding us a ton of cards to get some points for themselves. We love having this many cards as the Lizards, but what they're doing is improving their relationship, and if they get to the state of being fully allied with the Lizards, they can just aid for 2 victory points per card they give, and move our warriors at will, which is terrible. So allied is a double-edged sword for sure. The Marquise crafts boat builders, which is very interesting. Typically we like to see bird cards used as actions, but on the winter map, boat builders is a fantastic craft. And let's see how the Cats player decides to utilize that. Right now they definitely want to start building because there are 5 pieces of cardboard in their keep clearing. That is just, it's stressing me out. I don't know if you can tell. Something that I don't hate at all is to do a sort of quote useless battle against an enemy to thin out their forces, but also just use field hospitals and bring a warrior back to the keep. That way you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, no pun intended. You can back up the defenses of your keep by using field hospitals, but also whittle down the army of another. So I'm typing into the chat that we need to hit the Vagabond because I'm getting a bit nervous because of the fact that they're becoming more and more allied with me, ironically. Yeah, in this matchup, it's kind of the Riverfolk's job to be the great equalizer of the map because neither the Cats or the Lizards are really good at battling. So when everyone kind of has the same meta understanding of whose job it is to police, whose job it is to get stuff done on the map, then it's kind of understood who I'm talking to. I'm trying to encourage conflict between the Riverfolk and the Vagabond, and the Riverfolk is wisely saying, hey, I'll do it if you pay me. And we're seeing it come back to bite the Cats player. The Qeyrie is the Riverfolk player, and they're going in to just demolish the poor Cats for leaving their keep way under defended. I think it was just too tempting after a while. Yeah, I am a Cat loyalist player, and I really hate to see this, but I totally understand. The Riverfolk player is just 3 easy victory points for just doing 2 quick battles. So Q is apologizing for the despicable keep assault, and I'm happy to say that the Marquise player was a really good sport in this game. So a lot of random opponents in Digital would just resign at this point out of frustration, but this person was a good sport. They said no problem, they totally understand, so I really appreciate that. So shoutouts to Esend for not being a little baby and just leaving the game once things went a little sideways for them. And they're just gonna draw some cards to finish off the turn. So as you can see, I'm kind of behind. I'm at 2 victory points and everyone else is already in the double digits, so we're gonna have to start making up some ground. I don't mind buying, because even though I'm bolstering the power of the Riverfolk a little bit, they know that I'm not the current threat because I'm so far behind in the race. So even if the riverfolk gets slightly fed, I'm not likely to be the target. If anything, now that the cats have been checked, they're gonna start going after the vagabond, which is exactly what I want. So now we have a hated outcast. Are we gonna spend the acolytes? No. It's also a really important point of skill, I would say, of awareness, of knowing when to save your acolytes for future accumulation and big bursts of action, and when to hold off on your acolytes or when to actually use them. So of course we want to start building the defenses of that fox clearing. It's very sensitive to us right now. We're gonna recruit there, and then we're going to do a few sacrifices to get some acolytes for the next turn's actions. So those aids from the scoundrel were very helpful this turn. You might be asking, wait, why don't you build another garden in that empty slot in the south? I really don't want to, because 3 gardens doesn't do anything for us. It won't increase the number of victory points we get when we take the score action, and there's just no value in it. All it is a bigger target, because now we would lose 2 gardens, or 2 cards from our hand if they got removed. So I'm happy with my 2 current mouse gardens. And as you can see, I'm looking at the Lost Souls. There's a mouse dominance that I'll be able to dom swap on a future turn. So I'm planning around that while also trying to figure out what I want the outcast to be. So getting rid of bird cards. Bird cards can be valuable for the purposes of dom swapping, which we'll explain. And as you can see, I'm struggling a little bit to figure out what I want to throw away. I'm trying not to throw away rabbit cards because I really don't want another rabbit outcast, but also I don't need rabbit cards, so it's this very difficult push-pull with what you're throwing away, and I finally ended up deciding to give up on the dream of crafting Qeyrie Emigre. Sometimes you have to just change your plans. Even though I wanted to craft that, it might not work out, and I can't spend half the game chasing after a dream for something that's just not gonna pan out well. The Vagabond player is still staying fairly close to my area in order to probably aid more cards, I would say. Yep, so they're gonna start aiding, but they're not gonna aid me. They're gonna aid the cats, which I really like because the cats have just taken a big hit by losing their keep. So it's probably safe to bolster them a little bit by giving them cards to help their development. And oh dear lord, another root tea. And again, the crafting of a root tea gave me a mouse outcast again. We're back to the same problem. Both times was because of crafting root tea. So, whew, we are in rough shape right now. So of course, one nice thing about having the Riverfolk in game, not only can you buy services, which makes your engine a little bit easier to run if you know what to buy, but they pepper the board with trade posts that are very easy battles because you can always see their hand and you can see whether or not they have an ambush card that could potentially bite you. So if you see there's no ambush, those trading posts are just candy waiting to be picked up. The Marquise, interestingly, is going to buy another card, even though they've been smacked pretty hard by the Riverfolk. So I guess they were forgiven. They're crafting false orders, which is really scary for the lizard player. So if you notice in that top corner, or the northern fox clearing, I only have 3 warriors. So on the next turn, they would be able to use false orders to move 2 of them out. Then I would have 2 gardens defended by 1 warrior, which would be a disaster. So I am starting to sweat a little bit, and I'm thinking that fox card I have in my hand, instead of scoring with it, I might actually just have to use it to recruit to increase the defenses of that fox clearing, because right now that is my most sensitive point. Now, here's something that I don't really agree with when it comes to marquise placement is these 3 workshops in the same clearing. Like I mentioned earlier, I try to always have a workshop positioned over another building that I'm trying to defend, like a sawmill or an important workshop, because then every time I take a recruit action, it automatically reinforces the defense of those important clearings. Because right now, they have 3 workshops in this, 3 recruiters in the same clearing. So yes, when they recruit, they get a big ball of cats. But what are you gonna do with all of those? You still have to take a march action in order to distribute them where you want them to go. Versus if you just arrange the placement of the recruiters a little bit more intentionally, then there's no need to waste actions moving around all of your cat warriors. You might think that you want a cluster of cat warriors to whirl them around like a cannonball to go and move and battle and move and battle, but the cats just don't have enough battle and move actions to make that really lucrative, and it doesn't net them at nearly enough points to outrace the table. What does help the cats outrace the table is their ability to build, so they have to be able to rule in order to do that. We're seeing the cats player do something pretty selfless actually, which is battle the vagabond. Honestly, this is very generous of them because they're not in the best position and they're still doing something for the good of the table, when I think that I keep saying the Qeyrie, the Riverfolk player is the one who's kind of most pressured to do that because they have the means and the motive in order to slow down the vagabond so that they eventually overtake. But instead, what I think the cat should have done was take a march action to defend those little sawmills. Look, you've got 2 sawmills, each defended by 1 single cat warrior. Again, the cats have critical buildings that are not that well defended. And the Riverfolk right now is just drawing up some cards, but they could easily swing into those areas in order to just battle those sawmills away. So we're seeing the Riverfolk craft Rabbit Partisans, which is a great craft for them, since they'll be able to do a lot of really effective punching, but then they undo. And they're gonna undo a few actions, and you'll see why. This is a really good tip for advanced Riverfolk play. See how he's undoing his actions to draw 1 card. He counted up how many actions he's gonna have for the turn, and realized he would have 1 fund left over. The reason that if you make a plan, you should try to make a plan and then see how many funds you'll be left with and then draw that many cards. Because sometimes what you'll see happen is you execute a plan and with your remaining funds, you draw a card and you go, oh, if I knew I was gonna draw that card, I would have done my whole turn differently. And that's why you should try and take advantage of the fact that the Riverfolk can draw cards in daylight in any order they want. So you make a plan, you say, I will be able to draw 2 extra cards with these excess actions. Draw those cards at the start, because if you end up drawing a really nice item like a tea or a coins, that could redefine what your turn's gonna look like, and then you plan your whole thing in a different way. So I'm gonna go ahead and buy the Informants, obviously not to craft it because it's not a very good craft for the Lizard Cult, but what I'd like is an extra fox card in order to build up some defenses in that northern fox clearing, because of the false orders is still pretty scary. Now, once again, we are stuck with a rabbit outcast. However, it's a hated outcast, and so what I can actually do is I can use this rabbit card I drew to plant a garden and then craft the boot. And what you're seeing is I also want to hit this trade post in rabbit, but I don't want to convert one of the cat warriors on top of all these recruiters, because I don't want to make it easier for the Riverfolk to come and just pummel the cats in that clearing for 3 building points. So instead I converted this other one in the south in order to move it in through a crusade and then battle the trade post. So I'm being a little bit friendly to the cats player, but not just to be friendly. it's also just to try to deny the riverfolk easy battle points. So we're gonna plant that rabbit garden, which is another liability, but it will allow us to craft this boot, which is a soft denial of the riverfolk as well, since they won't be able to craft the other boot. We're gonna score with this not super valuable fox card, and then use this bag in order to build up some defenses. But as you're noticing, look, I realized that there's a mouse and fox dominance card, and what you want to do is try to claim the dominance cards in order to keep them locked up in your lost souls. The reason being is that at some point you might not have the suit that you need in order to score. So what you should do is spend cards in order to claim the dominance cards, and then nobody can take them from you. So you can keep them in that cycle of lost souls, and then on your own turn just take them back. And typically you want to use dominance cards to score, since you like discarding dominance cards, as they're just going to fall back into the dominance card area at the end of your turn. Or when you empty the lost souls, I should say. So we're just doing all those actions again that I had done. So try to be very mindful of the dominance cards and keep them within your orbit, because the minute that you forget to do what I just did, which is the dominance swap, someone else could try to take a dominance card from you, not necessarily to win, but to deny you the ability to swap out bird cards for the dominance cards that you want in order to score, and that can be really crippling for the lizards. So I go into evening and I'm able to craft the last boot, which is excellent. We need every point that we can get. Ooh, and now here comes another interesting decision. Do I hold on to that coins that we just drew? I'm throwing it away for two reasons. One, I don't feel confident in my ability to get another rabbit garden that I can defend, and I'm able to discard it in order to sway the lost souls towards fox. I'm constantly trying to get it away from rabbit, and I don't mind throwing away a coins card to do it. Ooh, Vagabond just got themselves a hammer, which is another fox card for the lost souls, which is kind of good. One thing to note is that I've now drawn false order, so I have two cards that I could craft in fox. So I'm looking at all the fox cards in the lost souls, and I'm very happy about this. And one of them is that dominance card, of course. So on my next turn, if it stays fox, I can craft false orders and that crossbow, provided I hold on to the bird card. I'm still a little bit nervous about this false orders that the cats has. However, I don't foresee them using it on me at this point, because I do have I have 4 warriors in that northern fox clearing. So if they use it on me to thin my defenses, they would still have to march their warriors in and then battle, probably twice. I'm feeling a lot better at this point about that false orders. So this Vagabond is just questing and aiding and questing and aiding, doing not too much aggressive stuff, but still keeping ahead on the points track, which is pretty efficient. So of course I'm very happy that the Cats player did not choose to purchase again, because I already made a purchase, and if they bought another hand card, the Riverfolk would start their turn with 6 warriors. So it appears they're going to use false orders, but who are they going to use it on, mind you? They use it on me, and I had actually forgotten that they had riverboats at this point, or boat builders. And I thought this was a very curious use of false orders, considering they could just march a warrior across the river and then claim rule of it instead of moving my warrior out. But hey, it saves them an action. So very, very interesting use of false orders in that case to regain rule of an area and being aware that the river does count towards their ability to build stuff. So kudos. They're gonna use that to, again, build another second fox workshop, which is curious. So watch that, look at that, massive recruit action. Now they have 8 warriors in that one clearing, and what I would do is do a big march to go and reinforce those sawmills, because right now you have 2 pieces of cardboard defended by 1 warrior over on the leftmost mouse. Are they gonna do it? No, see, no, that looks like they're not gonna do it. So whenever you do this, where you leave a clearing with 1 defending warrior and 2 pieces of cardboard, you should be expecting aggression. I wonder if this Cats player is used to a less aggressive meta where the people they play with typically just race for points and kind of ignore battle and don't do a whole lot of interaction, but in this group with me, Tim, and Q, we're not quite as friendly. We're much more aggressive with each other in a respectful way. So I'm gonna throw a little bit of table talk into the mix right now and suggest a friendly vagabond punching because I think it's called for. And of course, instead of doing the selfless thing and hitting the vagabond, the Riverfolk player is gonna go and take those 2 juicy cardboard points from the Cats. So totally understandable, and 0-0 roll sucks to suck, but it didn't really matter because then they rolled a 3-1 roll. So sorry to the Cats player. I think that they ignored it on the last turn just because it kind of hurts to be this mean to the Cats, but when you make it too tempting, you're kind of leaving no other choice to your enemies but to come and seize those points when they have the opportunity. So I think a march using boat builders would have been really effective. They used boat builders in order to build that workshop and to connect their supply of wood and warriors and rule, but they didn't use it to move, which is a bit curious, especially considering they had, what, like 8 or 9 warriors in that clearing before when they pumped out all those recruits. Oh, another important thing is that look at how many recruiters they have. They have 4 recruiters and 1 sawmill, previously 2, but you definitely want to have the balance be geared more towards sawmills. You want minimum 3 recruiters because that unlocks the dual card draw, so you're drawing 2 cards per turn instead of 1. But after that point, you want to prioritize sawmills. That way you can continuously build turn after turn after turn, generating more wood. Finally, we get our Fox outcast. So we dump those dominance cards out, and are we going to take any actions? Now here's where I think that I made an interesting decision. So I decided to battle the Riverfolk here, and of course, you know that the Riverfolk has an ambush card. But I knew that Q is a very strong player, and he was likely to not use the ambush against me. Why? Because it would have been a waste. It would have been a waste to use it on me because they won't be able to make it all the way north to capitalize on the damage they did with the ambush card, and someone else would likely get those points. And you kind of want to save the ambush for your own aggression later, so I had a feeling he wasn't going to use it on me, so that's why I did the attack. And it paid off because I got a free point from that trade post. So we're doing the dominance card shuffle and then scoring. Trying to do some negotiating. Don't hit me! So a nice double score there again for 4 more victory points by scoring in fox and mouse. And now we have to do some housekeeping. We have that rabbit card, which we're going to use to back up that rabbit garden I planted, literally only to craft the boot. I have no other purposes for that rabbit garden. And then we now get to craft both false orders, and that crossbow. The crossbow craft, I'll admit, was a bit greedy. In a game with the Vagabond, you have to be very careful because especially the Scoundrel, who starts with a crossbow, now that Vagabond's gonna have 2 crossbows they can use to do massive damage and potentially get a lot of points. So this was a little bit of a selfish craft, but as the lizards, you don't know when you're gonna get an opportunity to craft in a given suit again. So I just went for it. So you notice that the river folk is now in a very strong position. So I'm saying, hey, we can't keep purchasing. They don't have tons of funds, but the fact that they have a lot of their crafting ability unlocked, right? They already have 2 foxes, 2 rabbits, and a mouse unlocked, means that they can potentially craft more high value items. But a lot of those items have already been crafted, so maybe it's not as dangerous, but in this meta where the cats are not exactly defending their cardboard holdings very carefully, it could be very easy for the riverfolk to just move around chomping on cardboard. Again with these, it's so funny to see the Scoundrel being played this way. They're questing with their swords in order to draw more cards and then aid. And guess who they're gonna aid? Notice that they're already at friendship level 2 with me, which means 3 more cards aided to the lizards makes us fully allied, which, as I explained earlier, is danger zone. Alright, so now the risky part about what I did last turn, scoring and crafting all those cards, meant that I ended my turn with only 4 cards in hand, which is not what you want to see too often as lizards, especially since I didn't have a fox card. However, I did draw a bird card, which is fantastic because now I can spend that bird card in order to swap it for the fox dominance and still maintain my scoring in fox. That's how you want to think about using dominance cards as the lizards. I can use that core vid planners to take the fox dominance, so I'm happy about that. I'm a little bit scared about the aid cards that the Vagabond is giving me. I like having more cards, obviously that's a wonderful thing, but... Oh, and look at this. He's given me another bag, so now I have 2 bags in hand, and there's still 2 in the supply, meaning that if the outcast shifts towards mouse, I could craft both of them. Hey. The only scary thing is that the Vagabond is inching closer and closer to allied status. They're taking their time to decide which items they want to use in which order to aid, which is totally understandable because the Vagabond is a very complex efficiency puzzle of which items to use for which actions. And I think that the Vagabond is playing a very, very strong game in this case, using every action really precisely. And of course, they are going to move again, and they're going to aid me another card. This is the 3rd card they're aiding this turn, which of course makes us fully allied. It's going to be a bit dangerous because now any card they aid in the future is going to give them 2 points, and when they move, they could move all of my warriors out of a clearing, which is horrific because then it would be very easy to destroy the gardens. However, we get a rabbit dominance, and as I've talked about, these dominance cards are very effective for us because we can swap out any bird card to claim any suit of dominance, which is great. And the cats are gonna craft their 2nd sword of the game, which is, that's so questionable, very dangerous, because this Vagabond is in such a strong position right now. So they've already accumulated so many points from just aid, basically. Just crafting, aiding. They haven't been getting that many points from questing. But now that they're going to have a third sword in circulation, they could potentially go completely ham with infamy points. Cats are going to build another sawmill. I like that. But then they're going to overwork. And are they going to defend that clearing with 3 pieces of cardboard on the right with just 1 warrior? Overwork again? Okay. No! If you're going to overwork like that, typically you want to use them right away. Every time that you don't spend wood as the cats, those clearings become even juicier targets for the enemies. Look at that. 1 warrior, again, defending 3 pieces of cardboard. I'm not trying to get on this particular cats player that much. It's just something I want you guys to be mindful of, is that the cats can be very easily targeted. And when you leave this much point salad just on the table with very little defense, you're asking for it, honestly. So let's see if the Qeyrie does the responsible thing and does a little bit of vagabond punching, or if they're going to do the greedy, albeit understandable play of going after that clearing with 3 pieces of cardboard. So I'm just counting up the actions they have. So they have 4 funds left, so they could potentially take 2 swings at the cats and then move and then take a swing at the vagabond as well, which is not what they decide to do. They decided to get their last fox trade post, which is interesting. I'm a bit surprised by that, because now they won't be able to get any more fox trade post in the future as a result of this. But they are going to completely leave the cats alone, which I find super curious, and battle the vagabond. The vagabond can see that the riverfolk has an ambush card, so probably wisely not activating their own ambush. However, riverfolk then uses rabid partisans, which gets rid of so many different cards in their hand, and now they're reduced all the way back down to tunnels. So let's see what they discarded. They discarded the mouse ambush, they discarded Murine Broker, the sold out sword card, and the bird ambush. So that was tons of stuff that they dropped from their hand in order to smack the vagabond just a little bit more, which is very responsible of them. I guess they might feel a little bit guilty for not hitting them sooner, but it's appreciated. Now the vagabond is carefully considering which items to damage, and that is it for the riverfolk's turn. A very unselfish turn, I like it. Now I get a nice juicy turn as the lizards, because I was aided so much, and now I start my turn with 7 cards in hand, which is just a dream in most circumstances. The problem is that I'm a little bit scared about this vagabond being fully allied with me, and I can't do anything about it. He wisely made sure that I wasn't able to, retaliate against him because of the fox outcast. So now I'm looking around thinking if there's something I can do where I can use false orders to then convert and attack the vagabond, just so they counterattack me and lose the allied status. And I'm looking around, and there's no way to do that. Yeah, try as I might, there's nothing I can do with this false orders as of now, so I'm gonna skip it. Sometimes knowing when to hold off on using false orders is the mark of, just a very careful player. So I don't have any fox cards in my hand, but as you notice, I'm able to just ditch that bird card in order to claim fox dominance, and then I still get to score. So always try to be scoring. This is something that whenever I see random people in the lobby playing lizards and they don't keep scoring, I'm just pulling my hair out thinking, you could be doing so much better in this game. You just have to be scoring. Look at this. I'm really keeping up pace with the rest of this table. Even though I was, if you remember earlier on, way behind. I was at 2 points while the rest of them were at 10. And now I've just rocketed ahead. Partly because of the aid cards that the Vagabond has been giving me, I'll be real. But also, that's how the game is sometimes. Now I have one more warrior in my supply because I gave some of them to the river folk, and watch where I place it. I could place it on any of my gardens to try and reinforce some defenses, but instead, I'm putting it over here on top of that trade post, in that empty clearing. I have no intention of building there. The only reason I did that was in order to maybe down the line, especially if I get a mouse outcast, I can use it to battle that trade post. So watch, I drew a bunch of mouse cards, and I'm going to discard them in order to push the outcast towards mouse for 2 reasons. One, to battle that trade post that I've just supplied with my own warrior. Doing a little bit of a outcast lost souls count. But 2, because look in my hand, I have 2 bag cards, and both bags are still in the supply. So not only would I be able to battle some easy cardboard, but I can also craft 2 items for points on my next turn. So I checked, made sure that the bags were still in there. Now at this stage, the Vagabond, I'm starting to wonder if the Vagabond can just win on this turn. They have a couple of items, they have a couple of cards and a good supply of items. Yeah, let's see how Vagabond decides to play this turn, which could very well be their last. So I'm pointing out in the chat something that I know that Q is aware of. I'm just saying it for the sake of the video and the table, that you want to try to send the Vagabond to the forest minimum once per game. And the best way to do that is by hitting them early, because if they only have 6 items and you damage 3 of them, they are likely to maybe take a skip to the forest. But if they have 12 items and you damage 3, then they're definitely not going to want to go to the forest at that point. So the most effective damage you can do against a Vagabond is early. And we did not do that. So the Vagabond player is clearly going for the win right now, because I'm sitting at 22 points. And he's just giving me tons of cards right now, which is likely going to be helpful and instrumental in me winning on my turn. So they're just throwing caution to the wind in order to race for 30, and this is looking bad, people. So I checked, they're all out of cards, so there's no more aiding that they can do. But now, notice that they still have 2 crossbows and 2 swords. So Vagabond's doing the math, trying to figure out how they can get the last 4 points. What they need to do is become hostile and then knock out all of these lizard pieces, because they get 1 victory point per piece, and the garden is already worth 1 point. So if they can knock out all 3 of those pieces with 2 swords, they simply win. Thankfully, they gave me an ambush, so I can actually use it against them just in case they get bad rolls. So he's obviously not going to damage his swords. There's nothing I can do about that. It's really just if he rolls poorly, then I could maybe squeeze out another turn. Oh, terrible roll. This is so good. Now, the only way that Vagabond can win is if they roll a 2, because that would give them enough points. So I'm going to throw the other ambush at them, damage more items, and just pray for another bad roll. Watch my real-time reaction. This is great. I'm already typing GG, but no! He rolled a 1-1! Oh my goodness. Vagabond does not win. Yeah, Q is saying the same thing. Oh boy. So now he's down 28. He still has the crossbow. So, of course, remember, crossbow does not give you infamy points. So using strike to knock out a garden does get 1 point, but if he had been able to take it out with a sword, that would have been worth 2 points for the game. And the reason he didn't use the crossbow at the start is because he needed to do as much damage using the swords rather than the crossbow in order to win. So Vagabond played that turn beautifully, and that would have been the win if those rolls were slightly better. And Q is wisely pointing out that I'm now probably major threat level 1 because I just got aided a bunch of cards, as everyone saw, but I also am using Table Talk to remind people I just used all my cards. So I spent 2 ambushes to hit back at the Vagabond and then lost a card because of the garden destruction. So just trying to make sure to shed a little bit of heat at this very tense moment. So the Vagabond being at 29 points means that they're guaranteed to win if they get another turn, where they're not sent to the forest. Let's see what the cats decide to do. Obviously they need to spend some of that wood. Yeah, unfortunately, Tim got really unlucky with the timer. It forced him to throw away items that he probably wouldn't have, which is an unfortunate byproduct of being played as a live game when you have very deep decisions to make, but yeah, it is what it is. I don't think that, yeah. So we're seeing an overwork action, which is just wild at this point. I'm really hoping that they start building, and of course they do. Yeah, so I'm looking at the amount of damage we need to do. We need to damage every single item, because if he just has a torch, he'd be able to slip into that clearing with my garden and then just drop the torch for the last point to win. So every single item needs to be damaged in order to not have him 100% win. So Q has an interesting decision to make here. He's got to figure out, with the funds that he has, which is not a lot, he has to stop the Vagabond from winning because that's 100% guarantee. But also he kind of has to hope that I don't have the win. But my win isn't guaranteed from his perspective, but the Vagabond is. So he's wisely taking a couple of cracks at the Vagabond. Unfortunately, the roll wasn't amazing. But with that Rabid Partisans, not so amazing rolls become decent. Another terrible roll. Poor Riverfolk. So just, yeah, we're over here discussing how badly he got screwed out of that, that timer timing him out. So now he has one item left that's not damaged, the hammer, which of course can be used to repair the torch, and then he goes in, burns down my garden, and then game's just over. So even with that one hammer, he can still win the game. So I'm trying to talk Q into hitting one more time in order to give me the game, basically, so I don't have to do anything to the Vagabond. But Q very, very cleverly knows that I also need to do some damage to the Vagabond. So Q decides to leave the last item for me to hit him and spend some of my acolytes to control the Vagabond, which is smart, It's better than just doing all the work yourself. So sometimes you do have to put some pressure on your opponents to do some work. You can't do everything yourself. So Q is being clever about leveraging his position as the table police. Draw some cards, hope for an item. Now, as we see, both of the other 2 bag cards, there are 4 cards that craft a bag, and 2 of them I have, and 2 of them are in the discard, which means no matter how many cards the Riverfolk draws, they're not likely to get that bag unless they recycle the whole deck, which I'm very pleased about because now we're about to start my turn and we have a mouse outcast, so I can probably craft both of those bags. So I'm already looking at my cards, seeing how many points I can score, and I want you to pause the video right now and see if there's a way that you can find a way to win on my turn. All right, pause the video and figure that out. So I'm about to engage in some table talk, but I decided better not. I'm not going to even bother because I know that I've got this game wrapped up and I need to actually focus because I don't want to make a mistake. If I make one miscalculation in all of these actions, it could cost me the game. So I am just going to focus. So I'm gonna go ahead and just wish the rest of the team good game, because it is pretty much, actually it is 100% guaranteed that I win this game now, and let's watch it happen. So first decision, do we use false orders? It's not necessary, but I'm still gonna go for a stylish victory because I can. The safe bet would be, since we know that the Riverfolk doesn't have any ambush cards in their hand, we could just battle those two trade posts using the adjacent lizards in that in that mouse clearing. But I'm gonna try and go for the double building clearing over here. Cats have an ambush card, doesn't matter because I brought enough warriors and I rolled a 0-0. So the stylish finish didn't quite pan out the way I was hoping. I was hoping to get both of those buildings in one go. But that's fine, I still win this game. But importantly, if the Vagabond had not battled me and tried to win that game, I would not have had enough acolytes to make this win happen this turn, because I ended my last turn with only 2 acolytes. But now, I'm going into the turn with 4 acolytes, which is enough for 2 non-hated outcast battles. So this time, I'm just gonna do the non-ridiculous thing and battle the trade post, which I 100% know doesn't have an ambush. And now I get the 3. So we got 2 points from battling. Go straight into scoring. 2 points from scoring with Fox. 2 points from scoring with Mouse. And then of course we don't need to do anything else in Daylight, skip straight to the crafting step, and then we craft 1 bag, and then we're gonna craft the other bag to close out this game. So that was a really great game. I had a lot of fun with this one, very clever opponents, very interesting plays, and I thought this was a really good example of how to really methodically play the lizards and make very tense decisions. And I hope that this was very helpful for you guys and you have more confidence to play the lizards. See you guys next time.